let's go to the Jazz.
Okay.
So Lauri Markkanen is going to be in Utah for all of next year. As we predicted, someone shouted us out. Shout out to whoever shouted us out for predicting that he was going to sign the extension before all the reporting came out that he was going. It just seemed like for him, it seemed like the logical move.
Yeah.
Where are the Utah Jazz going is a fair question, but I think even with Lauri Markkanen, they're going to be worse. And they won 31 games last year. Now, the way they get to being worse, I think, is you just start to run out of teams that can be bad in the West. Right. And so even though you have Colin Sexton, even though you have Lauri Markkanen, even though you have John Collins, even though you have Jordan Clarkson, even though it's probably difficult to say we're going to play all the young dudes over some of these guys, it just might not matter. Like, you might not be as bad as you should be if you want Cooper Flag, but they'll win 30 games instead of 31, though, is how I frame it. They are invested. I don't think the only way I see them being better is if you re-signed Lauri Markkanen with the intent of, well, we're going to turn around and we're maybe going to try and trade for Brandon Ingram and get better right away, because they were involved in the Mikal Bridges sweepstakes. And if they want to go that route, they have the tools to, one, go that route and still just say, we're not done. We have other assets. But I do think that they're going to end up, maybe it'll be another sort of midseason about face, prioritizing their draft lottery stock. And I will say, I don't know if that's necessarily ideal, because you're going to be caught in this weird limbo again, where you're a lottery team, but you're not a high enough lottery team to believe that you're going to get one of the top picks. That's almost, or not, it's not immaterial to this conversation, but that's, if you're talking about the Jazz's overarching direction, it's fair to be concerned about that. But for this, I don't think they're in danger of being, oh man, they're a 35 win team and they need to pull out the rug again. Like, I think they might need to shut down guys or play them less once you get later in the season, including Lauri Markkanen. But by the way, I don't know if he really wants to be there, and you've had the conversation with them. He's now under contract. You don't need to worry about ruining his trade value or making him unhappy. He's paid. He's on the books. He can't leave. If you want to shut him down or cap his minutes or do both throughout the season, you can just do that. And so now there's at least clarity now that you know what's happening with Lauri Markkanen, because you can't move him during the season. So I think they'll win fewer, even if they go for it, just because the Western Conference, again, you look at this, we're on the board. There's no team, like the Clippers, in theory, might be going to the season like, we're kind of fucked, but they already know, like, their draft assets are headed out the other. Right. Like, so the Blazers are the only team as of right now that you look at and say they are intending to maximize their draft lottery position. And then I think after that, maybe the Spurs enter that conversation. Maybe there's a surprise team that enters it, but I think it's going to end up being Utah. And it might be out of the gate, in the sense that, I'll frame it this way. We normally just don't see trades happen early in the season. It wouldn't shock me if, like, Colin Sexton gets moved in November or something like
that. I think the Markkanen, it does clarify some things, but it also, wouldn't you love to know, and maybe I haven't looked at much of the reporting, maybe this is out there, I haven't seen it. Like, certainly there were conversations between Markkanen and the Jazz about, like, what's this season gonna look like? Because, and I think the main motivation for him signing when he's, so he can't be traded this year, is because he likes Utah and doesn't want to be traded. But was there a conversation of, okay, we want to keep you, we're going to be bad, like, on purpose this year? Or was it, if you sign and commit to us on this new deal, we're going to, like you said, turn around and trade guys to get better this year? I presumably some version of that conversation happened. I would just love to know, like, what was discussed, because that would give us a real vision into, like, okay, what is the direction for this team? I just think it really comes down to, like, what's the argument for them really trying hard to be better? And I guess it would be that, like, if you're talking about the draft lottery, what is it? The bottom 4 records get the 14% chance at the top pick. Mm-hmm. So, like, it's not just the West. It's, are we going to be worse than all, some number? You got to start thinking about Washington, Detroit, Brooklyn, like these. It's not just the West. Like, how do we assure we're a bottom 4 record in the league? That's too hard. Those other teams are too bad. We have Lauri Markkanen, like, so we might as well try to win 34 games or something, because we don't want to have the 5th or 6th worst record. Maybe that's, I don't know that makes tons of sense, but, like, that's how it would have to be sort of gamed out for it to make sense for them to try to hit the over, I guess, or win more than 31. I just kind of agree with you. Like, the wins are just going to be so much harder to come by. They're one of the only 2 teams in the conference that is incentivized to lose. And so I think they're worse. But I think, would you agree that they have the capacity to be better more so than like Portland does? I guess the win totals are different, so it's a hard comparison. But like Markkanen and the vets they have, like they've already proved they can kind of mess around and like play above 500 ball for like good chunks of the year. They've done it twice in a row. I just don't think you can do that three straight seasons and then pull the ripcord, in January.
Which is why, doesn't it feel like they're a classic TBD team in the sense of this can't be it. It's like they're going to end up trading away players before the offseason's out, or they're going to go out and acquire players that help them win, because I just can't buy into the fact of you mentioned it, that they're going to, for a third consecutive season, just pull the ripcord. I mentioned it before saying if they do it earlier, but like, what does that even, they could make a trade earlier in the, like, to start the season if they think that if they want to be better than expected, but why risk that for a third consecutive season? So it's just like, I honestly think there's a chance they end up being better because they decide, look, we have Lauri Markkanen, we've got all these assets. The Pelicans are willing to accept John Collins, Walker Kessler, and a dirt cheap first round pick, and we're just going to get Brandon Ingram and see how that works. Like, I'm honestly just open to them exploring that path, because they can't. This can't be like, the plan can't be to, we're going to re-sign Lauri Markkanen, run it back, and we'll kind of figure out like what to do when we get to December, January. It can't be that.
And to that point, with the Thunder kind of just generally not working this way, and also having a roster that we agree is awesome and basically finished for the most part, Utah is a team that can make the Godfather, like, here's 57 first round picks for the next disgruntled star. Like, we know you probably don't want to come to Utah, but we can make the best offer for you. So like, just pick Clarkson and Collins and whatever else for salary matching, and here's a bunch of picks. We can just go get, you name
what
the
player
guy.
is? You know what the player is? I'm going to mention him for so many teams.
Please.
You know who the player is. LaMelo Ball. That's the player.
Yeah.
Under contract. He's young. I know Markkanen's not super young, so you don't have to go that route. But like, LaMelo Ball on this team, I know you have Keontae George, but they could play off each other. Or maybe Keontae George is in that trade package in lieu of draft equity. They might even be a team that, depending on how they feel about Mark Williams right now, I assume they're still pretty high on him since they didn't take Donovan Clingan and they took Salon instead. They might like Walker. So if you're Utah though, Grant, now that you have extended Lauri Markkanen, what are you? You're in charge of the Jazz. Are you just saying, no, we have Lauri, we're going to trade everybody else, or we're going to make it clear to Sexton and Clarkson and these guys that they're not going to play a ton? Or, and honestly, maybe this is short-sighted of me, but they have so many assets, and I just don't see a way for them to be bad enough to like really juice up their lottery odds. I'm probably going the route of, Brandon Ingram's cheap, why not? Or I'll go all in for a LaMelo Ball, like someone who's younger, under contract for a while, that can noticeably impact their ceiling.
Man, my first instinct was, I really want Cooper Flag, and I already missed out on Wembanyama because we didn't tank soon enough. I can't let it happen twice in a 3-year span.
Fair.
But like, you did bring back Markkanen, like, and it did happen with the timing that makes him untradeable this season. I think your route makes more sense given where they are. And then like, it makes me uncomfortable because you're just giving up on the idea probably of, we're going to go get like a real, like someone better, someone that could be better than Markkanen, or could be better than LaMelo or Ingram or whoever we end up with. Like, you're closing that door a little bit, even though the draft's a crapshoot. Who knows? They could draft 7th and get the best player in the history of planet Earth. You never know. But like, I think I'm more with you that maybe you should add to this group. You already got 1 million picks, right? Maybe that's the play. I don't know.
By the way, and finally, I know people could say, well, Lauri Markkanen is more valuable as a trade asset on this extension. That is totally fair. But if you re-signed him with the intent to move him, you're in still an awkward situation of, you're not going to help his trade value if you cap his minutes or shut him down at some point. That's not going to help his trade value. And then if you're going to play him full bore, you're then only going to hurt your draft lottery stock, which matters because you would in theory then be planning on trading him. And so that's why I almost wonder, there feels like there might be, even if they're tiny, there might be fireworks in Utah left this offseason, because I personally do not see the logic behind re-signing him and then still prioritizing the ultra long game, or we want to go get Cooper Flag or have a top lottery pick, in part because I just don't see the pathway to them doing that without shutting him down, which makes no sense.
Isn't the logic that, and it's probably, to me, it's flawed. Isn't the logic that by getting Markkanen under contract for more years, he is a more valuable trade asset? Except the problem is he's a more valuable trade asset after a whole fucking year of playing on this team that's not trying to win, theoretically. Like, that's I don't know, man. Like, I'm not sure that can work.
If you traded on it, the other thing that's so hard about this team is, who are you trading that's not Markkanen? They say, that'll make the Jazz a lot worse. Like,
yeah, they don't have that guy.
It's Sexton is probably, like, to me, the closest. And then even if you trade or shut down these vets, we're just going to rule out that Keontae George or Cody Williams just kind of pop, or Taylor Hendricks pops. And I feel like I'm negatively critiquing the direction they're headed in. It's just so is it optionality? Is it lack of form? What is happening here? But at this point, I'm sort of bullish on the idea of, you might as well just try and get better and hope that, one, that helps you, but also that all these other teams as picks that you own, looking specifically at Cleveland or Minnesota, that some of those later selections just become gold you're either able to use in a trade to make you hit that level, or you end up with a top 7 prospect or whatever.
So then why aren't we saying they're going to be better? I think most of the arguments we've made is that it's easier in a lot of ways for them to be better, or it's like it makes more sense for them to try to be better. So is it just the West is hard, everybody else is above them? It's who can they leapfrog, so they should tank or whatever. But we've I don't know how long we talked about the Jazz, but they're an interesting team for all these reasons. Shouldn't we just say they're going to be better, since we agree, I think, pretty clearly that that's what you should try to do?
No, because here's my issue, is that if you're going to say they're going to be better, you either have to be just a huge believer in the roster that they have right now, or you're predicting that they're going to make that winish now, if you want to phrase it that way, move. And I'm not going to predict that, because Danny Ainge he's kind of in the Daryl Morey camp, where he's been willing to make uncomfortable moves or non-moves where others haven't. And so it wouldn't shock me if his plan is just, we're going to run it back and I'll make the decision midseason again.
Yeah. No, I think we got to stay worse, but I feel less confident in that than I did before we started talking about it. Because
so do I. I will say that,
there's a lot of.
What do you? But I guess the question is, we already answered what we would do, which is to go out there and make a move that makes you better. What do you think they're actually more likely to do? To make that move, or then sell off either before the season or in the middle of the season again?
I don't know now. I don't know anything anymore. Yeah, I'm not sure. It could go either way. Maybe it's just as simple as Danny Ainge is his defining characteristic is he is an opportunist when it comes to transacting. And maybe we're kind of being facetious, but maybe it really is. He's just we'll just kind of see. We'll see where we are. We'll see what's out there. We got, what's the urgency? We can decide what to do when the situation presents itself. And granted, I think also that does cost you probably your best chance to finish as a bottom 4 team. And maybe they don't care about that.
Is there any possibility that we're overestimating or underestimating how hard it is to pick up wins as a Western Conference team at this point? Because could they win noticeably fewer than 30? But I guess you run into let's go to the East. So we know the Blazers are going to be worse than the Jazz, assuming that the Jazz,
that's it. And the question you're asking is, where do those wins come from if they're going to get more of them? And it's the Grizzlies are going to pick up 25 more. The Spurs are going to win 20 more or whatever. Yeah. We look at our board, we've got way more 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So not way more, but we've got more teams improving than not. So and most of our, you said it, the Clippers, maybe some of the wins come from there, but other than that, it's and where do you find them?
Do you think that when you're looking at the East very quickly, I guess I'm not prepared to say that many teams are going to be worse than Utah. Detroit and Washington for sure. I think Brooklyn will get itself there. So that's 4 teams. Are you prepared to say that the Bulls, the Raptors, or the Hornets are going to be worse than those? Are the teams that you look at and say, well, I could see a scenario where it's a coin flip, or if Chicago starts moving players or isn't playing certain guys. The Hornets, if LaMelo gets injured again or misses time. But I would still say Utah, even as currently constructed, I'm not prepared to guarantee that they'll be better than the Raptors, Bulls, or Hornets. But I think you could say safely they'll be better than one of them at least. And so now all of a sudden it's okay. That's a bottom 6 record, right?
Right.
So is
No,
that
that
where
was what I was saying earlier. It's just like it's going to be real hard to assure you get that. You would have to do a ton of like purposeful maneuvering to make like we're definitely a bottom 4 team, because 31 wins is like, that's a lot. That's a lot when you're talking about like how far do we have to fall to
yeah.
get into this range we want. And it might be impossible. Like you might just not be able to. You can't get as bad as Washington, as bad as I think Brooklyn might be really bad. You mentioned Detroit. Like there's just the Jazz won more than twice as many games as both Detroit and Washington last year. Like I just don't. It's going to be tough. I don't know. Really interesting, sneaky, interesting team to talk
And
about.
we literally came to zero like consensus or resolution with them. We have them as worse, but we talked in
Yeah.
circles for 15
Oh,
minutes.
for sure.